what does it mean to attend to the spiritual dimension of life, or to live a spiritual life? From the perspective of spiritual Christianity, it begins with attending to the inner activity of our mind. To engage in an intentional spiritual practice involves using the mind's power of reflection to examine the quality of our mental life in the light of what spiritual truths teach. Many of the patterns of feeling and thinking that we live from have been built up without our conscious attention. Through an intentional spiritual practice, not only are we able to become more aware of these unconscious mental patterns, but we are empowered as co-creators to have these replaced with intentional patterns of being that can form the basis for a more spiritually conscious life. This process involves building a greater level of sensitivity to what constitutes a healthy or unhealthy interior life. We are all given the ability to self-reflect, and as this ability is cultivated through practice, so possibilities for real choice are created. This newfound freedom of choice operates at the level of what we will or will not entertain as the basis for our intellectual and emotional life. It is only through the exercise of this ability to observe the inner quality of the mind that spiritually unhealthy patterns of being can be identified. Once identified, then the possibility of real transformation opens up so that our potential to become a more spiritually conscious human being can be realized. To become more fully human requires that we become an active participant in our spiritual development. To this end, spiritual Christianity sees the revelation of spiritual teachings, what are referred to as doctrines or spiritual truths, as being essential for the development of the spiritual mind. However, in and of themselves, spiritual teachings only provide a starting point. It is their practice that leads to the opening of a person's spiritual senses, and so to a greater awareness of the essential nature of higher realities. Without the intentional practice of spiritual teachings, they can't be verified in our personal experience. Without the truth of spiritual teachings being grounded in our actual experience, our relationship to them will be limited to a merely intellectual interest. If spiritual teachings are to become more than something theoretical, then we need to be prepared to open ourselves up to being affected by them, and this can only occur through looking to consciously implement them as the basis for our interior life. So, in offering a conceptual framework here, it must be kept in mind that this is merely a scaffold, and that its usefulness can only truly be realized through actually working with these ideas personally, in a way where their practical implications for our life can be realized in the ground of our actual experience. But first that framework must be built so that we have the necessary mental structures from which to think spiritually, and into which higher spiritual influences can flow and be made available in our conscious awareness. From ancient times, one of the leading means for accomplishing this has been through engaging with sacred texts of divine revelation. Such texts provide a foundation on the natural plane of awareness that is specifically designed to ground higher spiritual influences in the reality of human experience. The nature of these texts is such that they have an external or literal meaning and a hidden internal or spiritual meaning. The external meaning is made up of expressions that relate to the things belonging to the external world. To the uninitiated, these texts appear to deal with events of a historical nature. But for those who have been initiated into the text's application to the internal life of the mind, they are understood as to their deeper spiritual meaning and application. The internal or spiritual meaning is that meaning which has application to our mental life. This is embodied within the external features of the text, which act as symbols that point not to events in time, but to the inner processes and states of mind that people experience as they undergo an awakening to the spiritual dimension of life. Thus, the internal meaning of sacred texts is revealed to serve as a guide to support people to navigate their inner states of life on their journey to awakening to higher levels of awareness. Spiritual Christianity teaches that by our spirit is understood the activity of our mental life. We engage with the spiritual dimension of life through reflecting on the quality of our thoughts and affections. Teachings or doctrines are provided to guide our practice and the development of the spiritual mind. Our relationship to teaching must move beyond just the intellectual and into its practice if it is to be personally verified and its benefits realized in our experience. In the sacred texts of divine revelation, we have the basis for building new mental structures in the natural mind that enable it to receive higher spiritual influences that flow in from the spiritual mind and present them in our conscious awareness. Sacred texts of divine revelation contain levels of meaning. The external features of these texts act as symbols that point to a deeper level of meaning that can be applied to the life of the mind.